All right, so get this. Ready for a wild one? We're going to dive into how, like, pearl diving turned into these crazy skyscrapers and global power, like serious power plays.
Yeah.
We're talking about the Persian Gulf states
Right.
and their journey from, like, literally desert landscapes to, like, major economic and political players. And our guide for this, get this, is this YouTube documentary called Transformation of the Gulf. From pearls to oil.
Yeah.
It's going to be a wild ride.
Oh, yeah, definitely a wild ride.
So buckle up.
Yeah, we're talking about a region that, used to be all about pearl diving.
Really?
Yeah, and that was, well, let's just say it was as tough as it sounds.
Oh, I bet.
Imagine like the scorching sun and the dangers, the deep sea.
Yeah.
And then the market could just change like that.
Wow, that's intense. And it's like hard to picture these modern cities with that kind of backstory,
Yeah.
Like, when did things actually start to shift?
Well, 1971 was a big turning point.
Okay.
That's when they got their independence. And right after that, bam, oil and gas.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, completely changed everything.
So we're not talking just like a little growth spurt here.
Yeah.
We're talking like a complete...
A total...
Yeah, total economic and social, like, upheaval.
Yeah, upheaval.
Wow.
Going from like struggling for basic things like, water to like flamboyant wealth
Right.
in just a few decades.
It's crazy how fast that happened.
Yeah.
Like hitting fast forward on a time-lapse video.
It really is, yeah.
So, okay, they strike it rich, right?
Mm-hmm.
Did they just, like, go on a spending spree? What happened?
Well, that's what's so interesting. Unlike some countries, who might have just blown it all.
Right.
The Gulf states, especially like Qatar and the UAE, they were really strategic.
Oh.
They got that oil wealth wouldn't last forever.
Smart.
So they made some really smart moves to diversify.
Okay, so no, like, fleets of gold-plated cars or anything.
No, not exactly.
So, like, what did they do with all that oil money? Give me the details.
Well, they thought big, and they went global.
Okay.
Real estate was huge. I mean, Qatar even got a stake in the London Shard.
Wow, seriously?
Yeah, imagine that.
That's wild.
And they built up these massive sovereign wealth funds.
Hold on, sovereign wealth fund.
Yeah.
Break that down for me. What is that?
Okay, so it's kind of like a giant national savings account,
Okay.
but like on a massive scale, right?
Okay.
The government takes some of its oil money and invests it in like all sorts of stuff.
Yeah.
Stocks, bonds, real estate, even infrastructure projects all over the world.
So it's like they're investing for, like, the entire country.
Exactly.
Wow, that's a pretty intense, like, investment strategy.
It is. It's all about generating long-term wealth
So
for
they-
like, way after the oil runs out.
Wow, they were really thinking ahead.
Yeah, way ahead.
Okay, so that's real estate and these, like, mega funds.
Right.
But were there other ways they were planning for a future, beyond oil?
Oh, yeah, for sure.
Like what?
Well, they knew they had to invest in a future beyond oil, right?
So they put a ton of resources into, like, sustainable development projects.
Okay, give me an example.
Well, there's Masdar City in the UAE.
Okay.
It's, like, designed to be this model for sustainable living, like totally powered by renewable energy.
Oh, wow.
And a big focus on research and development.
So it sounds like they're trying to be like leaders in sustainability.
Yeah, they really are.
But isn't this still the Gulf, like a place kind of known for its, conflicts and tensions and stuff?
Right.
Does that like clash with their whole forward-thinking thing?
You've hit on something really important there.
Okay.
Their journey is not just about, economics and technology.
Right.
It's tangled up with this really complex geopolitical reality of the region.
Okay, so let's untangle this like geopolitical web, right?
Yeah.
Where do we even start?
Well, they tried to create some, cooperation.
Okay.
They formed the Gulf Cooperation Council,
Okay.
or GCC.
GCC, got it.
It was supposed to be like this platform for collaboration, economic and political. Okay, so what's the catch?
Well, think of it like a family trying to work together.
Okay.
But there's like some major sibling rivalry.
Oh, I said.
Individual ambitions, especially with Saudi Arabia kind of dominating,
Right.
have kept it from like being a truly unified force, Like the EU.
No, so it's more like this fragile alliance then.
Yeah, exactly. And then, there's the big elephant in the room, Iran.
Right.
All that historical baggage, conflicts like the Iran-Iraq war,
Yeah,
ongoing border disputes, and then Iran's nuclear ambitions, all that adds to the tension.
So they're constantly, like, walking this geopolitical tightrope.
It's a balancing act, that's for sure.
And then we can't forget about the U.S. Really?
Yeah.
They're involved too.
Absolutely.
That adds a whole other layer to this whole thing.
Yeah, the U.S. has a big military presence there.
Right.
And a lot of the Gulf states rely on the U.S. for, security.
So it's like this web of relationships and like who depends on who.
It's complex, yeah.
Okay, so we've got the economic boom.
Right.
We've got this like geopolitical chessboard. But what about the people actually living there?
Yeah.
What's life like for them amidst all this crazy transformation?
Well, that's where the story gets even more interesting.
Okay, how so?
We're talking about societies that are like deeply rooted in Islamic traditions, but also going through this rapid modernization.
Wow.
It's like a clash of two worlds, right?
So how does that like play out in everyday life?
Well, it's a balancing act. And it varies across the region. Like
Okay.
you see these stark contrasts. You've got Saudi Arabia, very conservative. Even McDonald's has separate lines for men and women.
Oh, wow.
But then you have the UAE, which is much more relaxed and like, cosmopolitan. It's a
Right.
diverse region, dealing with all these different forces.
So what about women?
Yeah.
Their position must be like changing a lot with all this going on.
It is. It's complex.
Yeah.
Women are striving for more rights and opportunities.
Right.
But those traditional norms and expectations, they can create real challenges.
So it's like they're caught between these two worlds.
Exactly.
Tradition and progress.
Yeah, and then add in globalization.
Oh, right.
That's huge in the Gulf states.
How so?
Massive influx of expats.
Wow.
Creating these super diverse cosmopolitan places.
That's got to change things.
It does, but it also brings up concerns about labor rights and social inequalities.
Right, because there are a lot of workers coming from like India and Pakistan, right?
Exactly.
Right.
Tons of them coming from India, Pakistan, Nepal, all over.
And they're like the ones building all this.
They're building it, yeah, but they often face really tough conditions.
That's a good reminder that like under all the glitz and glamour, there are real stories, struggles that, we don't always see.
Absolutely. It's
Yeah.
important to remember that
Yeah.
this transformation has a human cost. We have to acknowledge those complexities, and how these changes impact everyone.
Okay, so we've got this crazy economic transformation.
Right.
We've got the like intense world of geopolitics and the society like wrestling with tradition and, all this modernity.
Yeah.
Is there something we're missing? Like another piece of the puzzle?
There's one more piece.
Okay, hit me.
The Gulf states, they're not just focused on economic power.
Oh,
They
wow.
want to be cultural powerhouses, too.
Really?
Yeah.
How are they doing that?
It's like grand museums,
Okay.
breathtaking architecture, massive investments in art and culture.
Wow, okay.
They're building iconic landmarks like the Louvre Abu Dhabi.
The Louvre?
Yeah, the Louvre Abu Dhabi. The Guggenheim Abu Dhabi.
No way.
Yeah, and Qatar's got this amazing national museum, all designed by world-famous architects.
That's like they're trying to put themselves on the map
I-
culturally.
Yeah, exactly. It's this blend of ambition, national pride, and a desire to reclaim a legacy that maybe got overshadowed by all the oil stuff.
So they're like rediscovering their own history too, right?
Exactly. They're investing in archaeological projects and creating these heritage villages to connect with their past.
But wouldn't that be seen as, I don't know, manufactured nostalgia?
It's a good question, and it highlights how complex their cultural ambitions are,
Yeah.
Are they really trying to reconnect with their heritage, or is it more about creating an image?
It's a tough one.
It is, yeah.
It sounds like they're trying to redefine their place in the world, but also hold on to their roots amidst all this change.
It's a fascinating paradox, yeah.
It really is.
It's one of the many paradoxes that make the Gulf states so compelling.
Mm-hmm.
They're not content with just being, oil rich.
Right.
They want to be known for their culture, too.
So they're writing a new chapter. And the world's watching to see how it all unfolds.
Yes, exactly.
We've covered so much in this first part of our deep dive. It's amazing.
It really is.
From pearls to oil, skyscrapers, cultural aspirations. It's incredible.
Yeah, it's quite a journey.
But before we move on, I'm curious about something.
Okay, what's that?
With all this ambition, all this change, where do you think they're headed?
That's the million-dollar question, and one we'll dig into more in part 2.
Okay.
But I'll leave you with this thought. Can these nations, built on all this oil wealth and rapid modernization, actually create a sustainable and equitable future?
That's a big question.
It is. And what will their role be in a world dealing with, climate change and social justice and all that?
Those are some heavy questions to think about.
They are.
Listeners, stick with us as we continue this crazy journey in part 2 of our deep dive into the transformation of the Gulf states. We'll be right back.
Yeah, it really is a question of balance. How do you balance all this crazy economic growth with, being responsible, like socially and for the environment?
Right. And how do you balance that desire for the future with like this whole romanticizing the past thing that really struck me in the documentary? It's like they're building these like futuristic cities, but also looking back at like simpler times.
Yeah, it's fascinating.
Remember those heritage villages they're making?
Oh, yeah.
It's like on one hand, you have these like crazy skyscrapers pushing the boundaries of architecture.
Yeah.
And on the other, there's this yearning for like, I don't know, maybe it's an idealized past.
It makes you wonder, right?
Yeah.
Like, is it really about preserving their culture or more about, crafting an image for the world?
Right. It's like saying, hey, world, check out how awesome we are now.
Yeah.
But don't forget, we've got history too.
Exactly.
But it's not just museums and buildings, right?
Right.
The documentary also talked about Al Jazeera.
Oh, yeah.
And how it's shaped media in the region, especially coming from Qatar.
Al Jazeera is such an interesting case. It became this like mega platform.
Giving a voice to people and perspectives that, the mainstream media often ignored.
So it really changed how the Arab world was portrayed.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
It's pretty amazing that it came from Qatar.
It is. It really put them on the map in a whole new way.
But there's something I didn't get.
Oh, yeah. What's that?
They said Qatar banned its own people from watching Al Jazeera at one point.
Yeah.
Didn't that seem, I don't know, kind of contradictory?
It does highlight, the complexities of promoting freedom of the press while also controlling information at home.
It's like they're saying one thing,
right,
doing another.
It shows that, these countries are trying to balance political and social reforms.
Right.
And it's not always easy.
Yeah. It's definitely not a straight line to progress.
Definitely not.
There are going to be bumps along the way.
Yeah.
And speaking of bumps, the documentary mentioned those protests in Bahrain.
Oh, really?
The ones led by the Shia majority demanding more rights.
Yeah. That was significant.
It happened there. Well, it showed just how fragile stability can be in the region.
Okay.
What's interesting is that the GCC, the one that's supposed to be all about cooperation,
right,
they actually stepped in to support the Bahraini government.
Wait, so they basically took sides?
They did.
That doesn't seem very cooperative.
No, but it shows how sensitive these governments are to anything that, feels like a threat to their authority.
So they were, like, scared of the protests spreading.
The Arab Spring definitely had a ripple effect.
Yeah.
The Gulf states saw what could happen and, they learned from it.
So now they're, like, extra cautious.
They are, yeah.
Okay, so they're dealing with internal pressures, trying to manage these, like, demands for change, all while navigating this, like, geopolitical minefield.
It's a lot to juggle.
It is, but even with all their efforts to diversify, they still rely heavily on oil and gas.
Yeah, that's true.
So what happens when those resources dry up?
Right.
Or, like, the world just moves away from fossil fuels?
That's the big question, isn't it?
It is.
They've put money into renewables, but it's a race against time. And it's not just about finding new energy sources. It's about dealing with climate change, which is already impacting them.
The documentary didn't sugarcoat it.
It didn't.
Rising sea levels, extreme heat, water scarcity, those are some serious issues.
Absolutely. The Gulf states are very vulnerable to climate change.
Yeah.
You can't ignore it.
So it's like they're trying to build a sustainable future while still relying on the very things that are causing the problem.
Exactly. It's a tough balancing act.
It is.
It needs innovative solutions, and they're going to have to make tough choices.
Yeah, their whole like vision of a glorious future seems a bit more complicated now.
It does. It's like they're trying to outrun the consequences of their success.
But there's one thing we haven't really talked about.
What's that?
We talked about the expats coming in.
Right.
But the documentary also mentioned the migrant workers and the challenges they face.
Yeah, that's a really important point.
It is.
Most of the workforce in these countries are migrant workers.
Wow.
Largely from South Asia.
Right.
And their experiences are a huge part of this story.
Yeah, and the documentary barely scratched the surface.
It didn't, but it's where social justice and human rights, really come into play.
It's like there are these two realities happening at the same time.
Right.
You've got the skyscrapers and fancy brands, but then you have the struggles of the people who are actually, like, making it all happen.
They're the ones building and maintaining these nations, you know?
Yeah.
But they often face discrimination, exploitation, and a lack of basic rights.
Right. And their stories don't get told as much.
No, they don't.
It makes you think, can you really have progress if you're ignoring the problems faced by a big chunk of your population?
It's a question every nation has to grapple with.
Yeah, but especially in a place changing as fast as the Gulf.
And where the wealth gap is so huge.
Exactly. If they want a truly sustainable and equitable society.
Yeah. They have to deal with this.
They do.
So it seems like they're at this crossroads,
Yeah.
facing a future with like tons of possibilities, but also potential problems.
Exactly. Their story shows us that progress isn't always simple.
Right.
Even the most ambitious transformations come with complications and unintended consequences.
So where do we go from here? What does it all mean?
Well, that's what we'll explore in the final part of our deep dive.
Okay.
But I think it's safe to say that the choices they make, both at home and, on the world stage, will have a huge impact, not just on the region, but on all of us.
That's a big responsibility.
It is.
Their journey has a lot of lessons reminding us that real progress means sustainability, social justice, and, being willing to face the challenges of this crazy world we live in.
Absolutely.
Listeners, stay tuned for the last part of our deep dive.
Yeah.
We're going to explore the future of the Gulf states and all the long-term stuff, all the implications of this incredible transformation.
It's going to be good. All right. Welcome back to the final part of our deep dive into the Persian Gulf states.
Yeah.
We've come a long way,
We have.
from those early days of pearl diving to, this incredible rise as economic giants.
It's been quite a journey.
It really has.
Yeah.
And now the big question is, what's next?
You're right.
What does the future hold for a region that just seems to keep reinventing itself?
It's exciting, isn't it?
It is.
But also a little, unnerving maybe.
Yeah, I get that.
They've achieved so much so fast, but the challenges are huge.
I know. It's like they're at this crossroads with all these different paths ahead.
And no clear map, right?
Exactly. They got this drive to innovate and push boundaries. But then there are these fundamental questions about, sustainability, social justice.
Right.
Their place in a world that's changing faster than ever.
Yeah. And the world is definitely watching.
Oh, yeah.
Their choices are going to impact way more than just the region.
You're kind of setting an example, in a way.
They are. They've become these key players on the global stage.
And that comes with responsibility, right?
Definitely.
To deal with some of those bigger issues facing all of us.
Absolutely.
So where do we even start with this whole future thing?
Yeah.
I mean, we can talk about climate change,
right,
political stability, economic diversification, technology. It's a lot.
It can feel overwhelming. Yeah.
It really can.
Maybe we could focus on a few key things.
Okay.
Their commitment to sustainability.
Okay.
They've put a lot of money into renewable energy projects.
Yeah.
But is it enough to actually, offset their reliance on fossil fuels?
I mean, the documentary was pretty clear about the climate change situation there.
It was, yeah.
Rising sea levels, extreme heat, water scarcity. It's serious stuff.
It is. They can't ignore it.
No, they can't.
And it's not just about dealing with the impacts.
Cool.
It's about reducing their own impact, their carbon footprint.
Because they are some of the biggest oil and gas producers.
Yeah.
Right?
Exactly. So what they do matters globally.
It's like they're trying to go green while still being, totally tied to the very industries causing the problem.
It's a tough spot to be in.
It is, for sure.
It's something a lot of countries are facing, but for the Gulf states, it's
Yeah.
especially intense,
Yeah, they built their whole success on oil and gas.
Exactly. And now they have to figure out this new world that's moving away from it.
Okay, so we've got sustainability.
Right.
But what about, the social and political stuff?
Oh, that's where it gets really interesting.
Okay, how so?
And maybe even more challenging than, ditching fossil fuels.
In what way?
Can they keep modernizing, keep diversifying their economies, but also hold on to their cultural and religious identities?
It's like they're trying to walk this tightrope
Yeah.
between progress and tradition, right?
Exactly. Can they build these more inclusive societies where everyone has the same opportunities no matter, their gender or background?
It seems like they're trying to balance these almost opposite forces.
Yeah.
Progress and tradition, individual dreams, and these collective values.
It's a tough balance.
It is, but throughout history, progress often means challenging the status quo.
It does.
Yeah.
And that can be hard in places that really value stability and tradition.
Right.
But the younger generation.
Oh, yeah, the ones who've grown up with all this change.
Exactly. They're likely to demand more,
More openness, more progress.
Yeah, they're the ones inheriting this future, and they see it differently.
Right. They've grown up with the internet, global connection, been exposed to all these different cultures.
So their expectations are different.
Totally different from their parents, probably.
Oh, yeah. They're more likely to push for social reforms, more political involvement,
Right.
a fairer distribution of wealth.
They've seen what's possible,
Exactly.
and they won't settle for the old ways.
That's a powerful force for change.
It is. It makes me wonder if we're going to see, like, this clash of values as these younger generations start speaking up.
It's definitely possible.
It's going to be interesting to see how it all plays out.
It is, and don't forget about technology.
Oh, right. That's changing everything, too.
Yeah, it's transforming every aspect of life.
And the Gulf states are embracing it, right?
Yeah, they're investing heavily in AI, robotics, all that cutting-edge stuff.
So they're not just keeping up. They're trying to be, like, the leaders.
They want to be at the forefront of the digital economy.
It's like they're always looking ahead to the next big thing.
That's what's so fascinating about them,
Yeah, it's impressive.
They adapt, they evolve, they embrace change, and use it to their advantage.
But adapting also means being flexible,
Right.
being open-minded, being willing to, like, challenge the way things have always been done.
Exactly.
And I wonder, can they keep up this pace of transformation while also dealing with, the social and political and environmental stuff that comes with it?
It's the big question. Can they create a future that's not just, rich,
Right.
but also sustainable, fair, and just?
Those are the questions, aren't they?
They are, and I don't have the answers.
I know, me neither.
But what I do know is that the Persian Gulf states, they're at this, turning point.
Yeah.
What they do now will shape their future.
And the world's watching.
Exact.
So what does this all mean for you, our listener? It means the world's a complicated place,
It is.
and it's changing all the time.
Constantly changing.
The Gulf states, the ones we used to think of as just pearls and desert,
Right.
they're now at the forefront of all this global change.
They are. Their story reflects everything that's happening in the world.
Globalization, technology disrupting everything, climate change,
Yeah.
the fight for social justice, it's all there.
It's a microcosm. Yeah.
And while we can't predict what's going to happen,
Right.
we can learn from them.
From their successes and their struggles.
Exactly. We can talk about these things, challenge our own assumptions, look at things from different perspectives.
It's about, thinking critically about the world
Yeah.
and our role in shaping it.
We hope this deep dive has, sparked your curiosity.
Yeah.
Keep exploring the story of the Gulf states.
Read more, watch more documentaries, talk to people who've been there.
Exactly. The more we understand their journey,
Yeah.
the better we'll be able to navigate our own world.
Because knowledge is most powerful when we understand it and actually use it.
Right. So keep asking yourself, what can we learn from all this?
Yeah.
How can we use those lessons to create a better future?
For everyone.
For everyone. That's the key.
Yeah.
Well, that's it for our deep dive into the Persian Gulf states.
It's been a fascinating journey.
It really has. Thanks for joining us, and until next time, keep those brains buzzing.